I carried a last name that could open just about any door, until I learned that million-dollar contracts had been signed under it, supposedly by me. At 19, I somehow got tangled in a scheme I didn't even know existed. By 29, I'd become the main witness against the man I once called my uncle. My name's Maya Quinn. I'm 29 years old, and up until this summer, I honestly thought I'd made it. Not in the glossy magazine kind of way, no yachts, no penthouses, no champagne breakfasts by the beach, but in my own small, hard-won sense. I had escaped. Out of my tiny hometown, out from under the weight of a proud, powerful family name, out of that suffocating sense of obligation. I had my own apartment, a solid job at an investment fund in New York, co-workers who respected me, and for the first time I was starting to believe in myself. It finally felt like I was breathing on my own. Then everything came crashing down on Tuesday, May 14th. The morning seemed perfectly ordinary. I woke at 6:30, made coffee, skimmed Bloomberg, and checked the markets. Everything looked calm, steady. I got out of the shower, wrapped myself in a towel, and that's when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Area code 202, Washington, D.C. Quinn speaking, I said, still toweling off my hair. Ms. Quinn, this is Special Agent Molina with the U.S. Department of Justice. We need to speak with you immediately. At first, I thought it had to be a joke, maybe my ex playing some weird prank, since we were still stuck in that awkward friendly limbo. But the woman's tone didn't waver. It was sharp, precise, clinical, like a scalpel. This concerns your involvement in Lexford Holdings, Ardent Bridge Capital, and a series of offshore transactions between 2015 and 2018. I froze. Water dripped from my hair onto the floor. The coffee in my hand suddenly felt scalding. You've got the wrong number, I tried to laugh. I have no idea what you're talking about. In 2015 I was still in grad school. Nevertheless, she said calmly, we have documents with your signature, copies of your passport, and your tax ID number. We'd like you to come in and talk. Is this a joke? You'll receive an official notice by the end of the day, she said. It's advisable you bring legal representation. Then she hung up. I stood there for a full minute, motionless. Then the phone rang again. This time it was my boss. Can you come in early today? He asked. We've got a couple of government people here asking to see you. When I got to the office at 8:10, everything looked normal. Joan, my assistant, was sipping coffee from her thermos. Jim, the security guard, gave me his usual wave. The elevator ride to the 38th floor was quiet, but when I stepped into the hallway, I could feel something was off. The air felt tilted somehow, like the whole world had shifted a few degrees sideways. Two men stood outside my office. One wore a dark suit and had a DOJ badge hanging from his neck. The other, in a sweater, had the kind of eyes that looked like they'd already memorized every detail of my life. Ms. Quinn, the first man said. Agent Molina is already inside. Let's head to the conference room. They led me to the long table and sat across from me. I sat at the far end, hands clasped, trying to control my breathing. Did you sign these documents? Molina asked, sliding a stack of folders toward me. I glanced at them, company registration certificates, contracts, signatures. Every single one looked exactly like mine. Not just similar, identical. Every loop, every stroke of my handwriting. It was like staring at a mirror version of my own mistakes. This can't be real, I said quietly. I didn't work for any firms in 2015. I was a student. Nevertheless, she replied, these are the records. Accounts opened in your name, your signature on contracts with investors from Miami, London, and Singapore. The total sum, $7.2 million. I felt my body go cold. My thoughts scattered. I couldn't tell if this was some elaborate scam or a nightmare I hadn't woken up from. Then I saw it. A name, printed neatly in the corner of one of the documents, under the header Legal Support. Victor Quinn. My uncle. My godfather. A partner at a Philadelphia law firm. The man who bought me my first laptop, who sent me letters every Thanksgiving. We'd never worked together professionally, but we were close, like family. My stomach turned. This has to be some kind of mistake, I whispered. Molina sighed. Ms. Quinn, we're not here to intimidate you. But this is serious. The documents tied to your name were used as part of what appears to be a large-scale money laundering operation. I wanted to respond, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight. After the meeting, I didn't go home. I just drove. Block after block, without direction, until I finally stopped at a small cafe on the Upper East Side. I sat by the window, ordered tea, and tried to look at myself from the outside. Who was I, really? Just a forged name on paper? A careless signature from years ago? Or someone who had been used without even knowing it? I pulled out the old notebook I always carry and began writing. What did I actually remember from 2015? Had I signed anything for relatives? Any visits to Philadelphia? Who had access to my personal information? And then it hit me, spring 2015. A visit to Uncle Victor. I'd been buried in schoolwork, exhausted. He'd smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it. You trust me, right? Just sign a few forms, student taxes, internship paperwork." So I did. I signed without reading a word. He even handed me a pen with his firm's logo on it. That memory left me cold. I had signed something. I just didn't know what. I got home close to 10 that night. I couldn't face the subway, the packed cars, the strangers pressed too close, the smell of perfume and metal, the endless ads staring at you. So I called an Uber instead. The moment I stepped inside my apartment, I locked every door. Double lock. Deadbolt. Then I turned off all the lights except the one by my bed and sat down with my laptop. I opened my email, turned on my VPN, double-checked my identity verification, and went digging through old archives. I started with 2015. Nothing unusual, no strange messages, no PDF files, just essays from my master's program. But something still felt off. That's when I noticed it, an old entry in my Google Calendar. Lex Consult, May 16, 10 a.m. Uncle's office. I would never have typed that myself. Back then, I didn't even use a calendar app consistently. I switched over to the documents the Department of Justice had sent me earlier that day. One by one, I downloaded them. Lexford Holdings LLC, it said, registered in Delaware on May 22, 2015. Founder, Maya J. Quinn. Under registered agent, AEL Legal Group, my uncle's firm. Another file, an investment agreement between Lexford and a Singapore-based company for $1.3 million. My signature sat right there on the final page, dated May 27, 2015. Something inside me clenched. That May, I was on antidepressants. My semester had been brutal, my relationship had just fallen apart, and my health was spiraling. Everything from that time felt foggy, like half-remembered dreams. Then a memory surfaced. I'd gone to see Uncle Victor in Philadelphia. He picked me up from the train station himself. We drove downtown to his office, 24th floor of a glass building, with a view that stretched all the way to the Pennsylvania mountains. "Relax here," he said. "I just need to take care of a few things. Sit in the conference room for a bit." He handed me a bottle of water and a pack of cookies. I remember sitting there, half zoned out, until he returned about 30 minutes later carrying a few folders. "Here are some documents," he told me. "I just need you to confirm them for the tax office. Won't take long." And like the obedient niece I was, I didn't ask a single question. I just signed. My hand shook, maybe from the meds, maybe from exhaustion, maybe both. Before I left, he rested a hand on my shoulder, warm, heavy, reassuring. "You're a true Quinn," he said softly. "You'll make us proud." Back then, those words made me feel seen. Now, they burned. The next morning, I drove to my mom's place in East Orange, New Jersey, the old house she and Dad had bought back in the 90s. After Dad died, she stayed there alone. We didn't see each other much, she always said she didn't want to intrude on my New York life. Truthfully, we were just learning how to live apart. I walked in without ringing. She was in her robe at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper like she did every morning. "You didn't call," she said, eyes still on the page. "I couldn't talk yesterday," I said, setting my bag down. "Something serious happened." She looked up, straight into my eyes. "Something at work?" I sat across from her. "Mom. I got a call from the Department of Justice. They're saying I'm tied to a bunch of financial companies I've never heard of. My name's on official documents. And Uncle Victor's involved. She froze, then lowered her gaze. I knew this would come out one day. My breath caught. You knew? Not everything, she admitted, sighing. But I suspected. He was already involved in shady business deals back when your father was alive. I overheard pieces of conversations. Your dad, he didn't want you anywhere near it. But after he passed, Victor got bolder. Too bold. Why didn't you tell me? Her eyes filled with fear. Because I was scared. And, Maya, because he's family. We were all raised under that name. I thought if I ignored it, it would disappear. I was wrong. I couldn't find the words. We sat in silence until she stood up, walked to the pantry, and came back holding a small cardboard box. This was your father's, she said quietly. He kept everything, letters, articles, even his notes. I never had the strength to go through it. But maybe you should. I opened the box. Inside were old notebooks, printouts, and a few envelopes. One caught my eye, my name written on the front in blue ink. Maya. Open if you have questions. Dad. My heart started pounding. I opened it. Maya. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I didn't get the chance to tell you everything, but you need to be careful with Victor. He's not who he seems to be. I've suspected for a while that he's been using family members as fronts in his financial schemes. In 2015, I discovered your name and signature on documents you never saw. I tried to collect proof. If I'm gone, don't stay silent. Protect yourself. And remember, your name isn't his legacy. It's yours to define. My hands trembled. I'd never seen my father's words sound so stern, so final. I folded the letter, pressed it to my chest, and let myself cry, really cry, for the first time in years. It wasn't just corruption anymore. It was betrayal. Deep, personal, devastating betrayal, by the people who should have protected me most. And even then, I didn't know how deep it went, or who else was in on it. But from that moment forward, I made a choice. I wasn't staying quiet anymore. When I got back from my mom's house, I didn't even make it past the hallway. I just sank to the floor, my back against the closet, clutching Dad's letter in one hand and that box of documents in the other. It was already past midnight, but sleep wasn't an option. The same phrases kept circling in my head, like broken echoes. Be careful with Victor. He uses his relatives as pawns. Don't keep quiet. Those words cracked something inside me, something old, something I didn't even realize had still been holding on. That childlike belief that family meant safety. That the people who gave you your name would never weaponize it against you. After a while, I pulled myself up, made some black tea, and opened my laptop. I launched Signal, the encrypted chat app my tech friends swore by. Then I opened a chat with Jonah Pierce, a digital forensics specialist I'd known for years. Maya, you awake? I need help. Jonah, always. What's going on? Maya, can you check if anyone accessed my Gmail, Drive, or email signature in the last decade? Especially around 2015. Also, my uncle, Victor Quinn, he's a partner at a law firm. I think he might have had access to my personal data. Jonah, give me 30 minutes. I'll need your logins, hashed passwords, and VPN permission. I sent him everything. 27 minutes later, he replied with a screenshot. Jonah, look at this. In May 2015, someone logged into your Google account from an IP address belonging to Quinn's law firm. There were 3 separate logins, one on the exact date Lexford Holdings was registered. And, there's something worse. My stomach dropped. My palms were slick with sweat. Jonah, there's a file in your drive called Lexford_initial_docs. It was created on May 26, 2015, and last modified in June 2018. You're listed as the owner, but the metadata tells a different story. He sent another image. Author, Victor Quinn. Device, AL MacBook Pro. Location, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I just stared at the screen, feeling anger, fear, and shame twist together inside my chest. He'd used me. Logged into my account. Created the files. Signed my name. All under the illusion that I was the one behind it. Maya, can you download that file and save a copy with all metadata intact, signatures, version history, everything? I'll need it for the DOJ. Jonah, already done. But there's more. Then he sent a link. It was an archived email, same time period. From Alan Lane at AliGalgroup.com. To someone named Marcus Levine. The subject line read, signature in place. Maya is unaware. All set. My throat tightened. Maya, who's Levine? Jonah, the owner of an investment firm in Singapore, same one listed in your documents. Looks like he's part of the larger operation. Maya, so I was basically the front. Jonah, exactly. It wasn't random. It was planned. I didn't answer. I just closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen. I wasn't a mugging victim who'd been blindsided in some dark alley. This was different. This was a coordinated attack, precise, deliberate. And the worst part? The person who'd done it was family. The next morning, I booked an appointment with Tessa Reed, a white-collar crime attorney I'd met at a few finance conferences. I trusted her. She had that calm, no-nonsense air that made people confess without realizing they were doing it. Her office was small, tucked downtown in a quiet building with no logos, no nameplates, just a plain door. Tell me everything, she said, flipping open her notebook. Leave emotions out of it. Just facts. So I told her. About the DOJ call, the fake companies, Victor, and Jonah's findings. I handed her a flash drive with all the evidence, the email logs, metadata, even Dad's letter. She listened without interrupting, only stopping to clarify a few details. When I finally finished, she leaned back. And your mother? She asked. She knew? Partly, I said. She was terrified. Tessa sighed. Maya, this is dangerous. If investigators determine you were legally part of these transactions, even unknowingly, they could still charge you with complicity. If we can't prove you were unaware, the case could turn against you. But I have proof, I said quickly. The logs, the letter from my dad. That helps, she said, but it's not enough. What we really need is testimony, or better yet, Victor's direct admission. He'll never confess. Tessa gave a small, grim smile. Then we'll make him. But you need to prepare yourself. Because what's coming isn't just legal, it's going to be public, messy, and painful. I nodded. I already knew. Because the worst part had already happened. I'd lost my faith, not just in family, but in everything I thought was safe. Walking into the Department of Justice felt like stepping into a dream where everything moved half a second behind reality. The air was heavy and strange, like I was breathing through glass. Every step echoed too loud. Tessa walked beside me, calm as stone, dressed in a dark blue suit that could have come straight out of a courtroom drama, except this wasn't TV. She was the real deal, tough, composed, the kind of lawyer who knew when to keep a client quiet. Stick to facts, she whispered. No assumptions, no theories. If you're unsure, say, I don't remember. She gave me a long look. Their goal isn't to uncover the truth, Maya. It's to make you look guilty. We were led into a small, windowless room, white walls, a metal table, 3 chairs, and a camera staring down from the ceiling. I could feel eyes watching from behind the mirrored glass. 2 agents walked in, the same pair who'd visited my office. Agent Molina looked sharp and unflinching, her dark gray jacket pressed to perfection, her eyes never blinking. Next to her was Agent Bailey, heavier build, square shoulders, eyes like scalpels. Miss Quinn, Molina began, voice cool and measured. Thank you for coming voluntarily. I'm here to cooperate, I said. Please, sit. We have a few questions. I nodded and took a seat. Tessa sat beside me, a notepad ready but silent. The first 20 minutes were routine, name, age, education, job history, connection to Victor Quinn. Have you ever worked for AL Legal Group? Molina asked. No, I said. I interned there briefly in 2014, just a week. I wasn't officially employed. Do you recall signing any paperwork to register a business in 2015? No, I replied. Maybe some forms for tax purposes, but I didn't know what they were. So, you're admitting you didn't read the documents before signing? Tessa leaned forward, her voice steady but sharp. My client was 22, emotionally unstable at the time, and she signed papers given to her by a trusted family member. They were presented as harmless tax forms. Melina didn't react. Are you aware that those same documents were later used to open offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and to transfer funds from Singapore and Luxembourg? I shook my head. I just found that out recently. Bailey slid another folder across the table. We also have this email. Sent from your account in May 2015. It says, signed. Go ahead. That was you, wasn't it? I stared at the printed message. The tone, the phrasing, it sounded like me. My style. But I had no memory of writing it. I don't remember sending that, I said quietly. But yes, it sounds like my writing. Someone else must have had access to my account. And who might that be? Melina pressed. I hesitated. Ms. Quinn, she said firmly, if you believe a family member took advantage of you, you need to say it. Otherwise, you're complicit. My uncle, I said finally. Victor Quinn. He had my personal information, tax documents, passwords, everything. I trusted him. Can you prove you didn't know about the transactions? Yes. I have digital evidence, system logs and metadata, showing those documents weren't created on my computer. I also have a letter from my late father warning that my name might be used. Tessa handed over the flash drive. Here's everything. You'll see that every file tied to my client was created under Victor Quinn's credentials, not hers. For the first time, Melina's expression shifted. Her eyebrows rose, just slightly. We'll verify this, she said. But even if you weren't aware, you still appear to be the conduit. Millions of dollars went through your name. Whether you were the front or not, we'll find out. I want to know the truth, I said. I'm not here to protect someone who used me. Are you willing to testify? Melina asked. Tessa touched my elbow gently. I looked at her, then nodded. Yes, I said. I'm ready. When we finally stepped out of that room, my legs were shaking so badly I could barely walk. The moment we hit the street, the chaos of New York, the car horns, the sirens, the thick smell of exhaust, felt like the purest air I'd ever breathed. You did good, Tessa said. I'm scared, I admitted. What if they don't believe me? They will, she said. We'll make them. But you have to decide, either you keep fighting, or you go back to hiding behind your family name. I tilted my head back and looked at the sky, gray, polluted, but real. And I realized something right then. I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. What terrified me was the idea of living the rest of my life under a lie. I stood on the platform in Philadelphia, watching the back of my train shrink into the distance until it vanished. The wind was sharp, the sunlight almost blinding. In my hands, I carried one small bag, copies of documents, a flash drive, and my father's old letter. My head was spinning so hard it felt like the world tilted with every breath. I hadn't told him I was coming. I didn't call. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't owe him that. I just needed to see his face, the face of the man who had quietly dismantled my life, and probably still believed he'd done it for my own good. Victor's house hadn't changed. 2 stories. Yellow brick. Perfectly trimmed lawn. Bushes cut with mathematical precision. The kind of place that practically screamed respectable lawyer. Funny thing, I used to dream about living in a house like that. I rang the doorbell. A few seconds later, the door opened. Maya? He looked startled, eyebrows raised, still wearing his weekend clothes, a mug of coffee in hand. You were supposed to be in New York. I need to talk to you. My voice came out dry, almost brittle. Of course, he said, stepping aside. Come in. What's going on? I walked inside without taking off my coat. The air smelled like old books and lemon polish, familiar, suffocating. I was at the Department of Justice. I said it flatly, eyes locked on his. The cup froze halfway to his lips. Then, as if catching himself, he lowered it slowly to the table. The DOJ, he repeated. What could they possibly want with you? Lexford Holdings. Ardent Bridge Capital. Offshore accounts. My signature on documents I don't remember signing. Logins from your firm's IP address. Emails sent from my account. I took a step closer. Want me to keep going? He looked down. Then, without a word, he set the cup on the foyer table. Maya, it's not what you think. No? My voice cracked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like you used me as cover. Without my knowledge. Without my consent. He sighed, a long, heavy sound, and for the first time, he didn't look like my uncle. Or the mentor I used to admire. He just looked tired. Like a man watching the walls he built start to crumble. It was a long time ago, he said quietly. It was just an investment structure. Something to protect the family. After your father died, I cut him off. You just walked into my life, used my name, my signature, my accounts, all in the name of family? I wanted you to have a safety net, he snapped back, his voice suddenly defensive. The world's not kind, Maya. You're young. You don't understand how big money works. You forged my signatures. I didn't forge them. You signed them yourself. Without knowing what they were. Legally, that's consent. My pulse pounded in my temples. Victor, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, you're a lawyer. And you're stealing my life, hiding behind legally, that's consent? He rubbed his temples. I was protecting you. If anything had gone wrong, you would have taken the heat, but I was managing it. I wouldn't have let you get hurt. And what? He looked up, eyes wet and desperate. And I love you. You're my brother's daughter. I felt responsible for you. This wasn't fraud, it was insurance. At my expense, I whispered. He said nothing. I reached into my bag and placed the flash drive on the dresser between us. Here, I said. Evidence, recordings, everything I gave the investigators. I could still stay quiet, still keep this private, but I need to hear it from you. Why did you do it? He sat down heavily, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. Because I was afraid. Afraid you wouldn't make it. That the world would eat you alive. This way, you'd have something. Capital. A foundation. I stared at him. Do you know what my foundation was? My voice trembled, but I kept it steady. My conscience. And now I don't even have that. I turned and headed for the door. Maya, his voice cracked behind me, raw and pleading. If you go through with this, you'll destroy more than me. You'll destroy everything our family built. Our name. I stopped, hand on the doorknob, and looked back once. I'm not destroying our family, Victor, I said. I'm cleansing it. Then I walked out. Didn't look back. On the train ride back to New York, for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. I felt angry, clean, burning anger, and underneath it, something new flickered. Freedom. The next morning I woke with one clear decision, I was done defending myself. I was exhausted from always reacting, from scrambling to explain, to justify, to remember. I didn't want to live hand-to-mouth with someone else's narrative anymore. It was time to push forward, to dig into how far this went and how many other people had been folded into someone else's so-called safety plan. I started where anyone would, public records. Lexford Holdings wasn't an isolated filing in Delaware. AL Legal Group had registered at least 9 companies over 3 years. The pattern read like a roll call, familiar names showing up again and again. 2 were former interns. 1 was a junior colleague's younger brother. Another was the daughter of Victor's next-door neighbor. I wrote the names down and found them on social media. Then I messaged them, keeping it plain and blunt. Hello. My name is Maya Quinn. This may sound strange, but your name appears on documents tied to AL Legal Group. If you're willing to talk, it might be important. I was listed in their papers too, without my consent. The first reply came from Dana Cabrera. Hi, Maya. You're the first person who said this out loud. I was terrified. I had the same thing happen. We set a meeting at a cafe in Soho. Dana looked younger in person than in her photos, 27, dark hair, bundled into a black sweater. She held a folder like armor. She wouldn't touch her coffee. I didn't want to come back to this, she said, voice low. But hearing you, I realized I wasn't the only one. How many do you think there are? I asked. 4, maybe more, she said. There's a guy named Brandon, he filed a suit, but it got buried. Did you go to the DOJ? I asked. No. I was scared, she admitted. I'm already talking to them, I told her. If we get more witnesses, they'll have to listen. She slid copies of documents across the table. They looked like mine, the same signature quirks, the same registered agent, the same narrow range of dates. Did they pay you anything? I asked. A few transfers, $1,500 to my Venmo after I signed. I thought it was a bonus, she said. Now I know it was hush money. My stomach flipped. Can I keep copies? I'll pass them to my lawyer, we already have logs, a flash drive, my father's letter. Maya, she said quietly, if this goes public, it'll ruin him. It might ruin the whole firm. And it'll expose dozens of lives built on lies, I answered. In her face, for the first time, I saw someone who wasn't alone anymore. That same night, I tracked down Jason, a junior lawyer who'd worked at AL Legal Group from 2015 to 2017. We met at a bar, he ordered whiskey, I stuck to water. He looked tired in a different, private way. I knew somebody would come forward eventually, he said. I saw the contracts and the names. The signatures. No one asked questions. Did you understand what they meant? I asked. I suspected, he said. But in that firm, asking was dangerous. Victor has connections. People were scared. I felt that old stab of shame, for my silence, for everyone's. Can you testify? I asked. If I get subpoenaed, yes, he said after a long breath. But if it's public now, I could lose everything. I've already lost everything, I told him flatly. He looked at me, and after a beat, he nodded. Okay. I'll give a written statement. No publicity. Not yet. I thanked him and stepped back into the night. The city felt larger somehow, less hostile. For the first time since this began, I wasn't entirely alone. Victor's structure was starting to crack, and I was ready to tear it down completely. I hadn't planned to go back to my parents' house. But after talking with Dana and Jason, something in me shifted. The answers weren't just sitting in official records, I could feel that. The truth was buried closer to home, right where everything had started. I asked my mother if I could look through the old boxes in the garage, the ones we hadn't touched since we buried my father. She didn't say a word, just nodded. The air in there was cold and stale, thick with dust and memory. I opened one box after another, photos, notebooks, old plaques from my dad's law firm. I found the doll I used to sleep with when I was little, its face faded and soft. Then envelopes, letters between my parents from the 90s, their handwriting so familiar it hurt to look at. And then, buried under a stack of papers, I found it, a small black flash drive, wrapped in a handkerchief and tucked inside an empty soap box. A folded note rested beside it, written in my father's unmistakable script. Maya. Only open if you don't know who to trust. My breath caught in my throat. I went to my room and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. 3 folders appeared on the screen. Video, April 2015. Audio, Mary. Notes, M. Levine/V. Quinn. I opened the first one. 5 video files. I hit play. The footage showed my parents' study, the camera positioned in the corner, half hidden. In the frame sat my Uncle Victor across from my father, flipping through documents. Victor, if she signs now, we can bring her into Lexford. The rest is just logistics. Father, she's a student, Victor. She has no idea what she's getting into. Victor, it's for her own protection. A cover. You said you wanted her to have a safety net. Father, not like this. The screen went black. The next video picked up days later. My mother was there this time, her voice trembling with anger. Mother, this is wrong. You're playing with her name. If she finds out, she'll hate you. She'll hate me. Victor, she'll never find out. Everything's airtight. Even if there's an investigation, it'll look like she was aware of it all. Mother, I won't sign anything. Victor, then I'll say it was your idea. I've already covered myself. The camera shook, then the file ended. I sat frozen. Barely breathing. The next folder held an audio file labeled Mary. I clicked it. My mother's voice filled the room, tired, broken, but steady. Maya, if you're hearing this, it means you found out. I tried to stop it, but I failed. My brother used me, used you, even your father. I signed one paper, he said everything was handled, that I was just confirming storage consent. I didn't know it was about companies and accounts and money. You know more now than I ever did. I'm sorry. If you can forgive me, please do. I broke down. I didn't know what was stronger, the rage or the heartbreak. My mother, the one who'd stayed silent for years, had been deceived too. Maybe even coerced into it. All those years, Victor had played the role of the family's guardian, the mentor, the man who looked after everyone. But behind that mask was something colder. A strategist. A manipulator. I opened the last folder, notes. Inside was a list of names, dollar amounts, and account transfers. Dana's name. Brandon's. Mine. Next to mine was $1,500,000. And beside it, assets placed through Quinn Family Trust. There was no Quinn Family Trust. Not in my life, not anywhere legitimate. But on paper, it existed, and that made it real enough for banks, regulators, and lawyers. That's when it hit me, the scale of it all. This wasn't just a shady side deal. It was a system. A structured, deliberate money laundering network built through interns and relatives. Disguised as protection. Disguised as family. I grabbed my phone and called Tessa, even though it was late. I found something, I said. New evidence, videos, audio, digital proof of falsification. And names. Other victims. She didn't hesitate. Good. We'll file for an expanded investigation. This isn't a family issue anymore, it's an organized operation. My mother was part of it, I whispered. That complicates things emotionally, she said softly. But legally? It gives us the full picture. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. What's next? A public motion. I'll request witness protection for you and the others. But you have to decide, Maya, are you ready to make this public? I looked down at the small flash drive resting in my palm, black, unmarked, heavy with truth. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. After I handed over the flash drive and everything on it, the formal notices began to arrive. On Wednesday, June 3rd, a letter from the prosecutor's office showed up. It was divided into 3 clear sections. Protected witness confirmation, the DOJ acknowledged that I'd been implicated in the criminal scheme but acted without full, knowing consent, and they accepted my cooperation. Personal security, instructions about safeguarding my information, steps to take if I felt threatened, and who to call. Law enforcement guarantees, commitments to protect my testimony and to shield me from pressure by Victor's business associates. That same day I called Jonah. If this holds, I said slowly, Victor's whole structure will come apart. We could even set a legal precedent. This could go as far as Congress. He answered quietly, good work. His calm steadied me. You need people like him, steady voices who keep you from falling apart. I spent the evening at the open window, reading the prosecutor's letter again and again. Each clause felt heavy, like the first bars of a sentence that would follow me for months. But I also knew, this was only the beginning. 5 days after we filed the materials, I was on the subway platform when a car screeched past behind me. I jumped to the far side of the tracks and watched a large vehicle roar by, missing me by inches. Adrenaline crashed through me, this wasn't coincidence. It wasn't paper threats anymore, it was metal and intent. Living with security is strange. Some days I long to walk outside alone, to breathe. But it's harder now, neighbors glance differently, whispers follow. In the elevator, someone asked, loud enough for others to hear, why so much security at home? As if I were the suspect. At work, even on vacation, rumors fester. A family of lawyers ran a scheme. Millions moved through an innocent girl. LinkedIn messages arrive, drop this, think of your career. I don't reply. Next steps, Tessa drafts a request to Congress focused on conflicts of interest and the use of lawyers as fronts. We agree on a media plan, a tightly controlled press conference after the first hearings, but for now the investigation stays sealed. I keep meeting witnesses, Dana, Jason, and 2 more people step forward. We begin drafting a joint statement. Another former employee, Anna, comes forward with details: money routed through fake real estate contracts, later laundered and labeled as student grants, all under my name. The creativity of their schemes makes my stomach turn. Then the first blows of intimidation arrive. One night I find a silver envelope slipped under my door, no return address, no signature. Inside are coins, grainy photos of my house, my address, and a card that reads, "You are far away, the investigator is coming." My chest dropped. I called the investigators. They logged it. The next day police officers came to my building. Fear should have come next, but what I felt was something else: resolve. If I stopped now, everything would stop. If I flinched, they would win. The press conference is set for June 24th. Tessa says it will be off-site, with DOJ representatives and several witnesses. Our statements have to be exact, measured. I look at myself in the mirror, exhausted, but with a burning light in my eyes. One thing is clear: I am ready for war. The morning of June 24th, I woke earlier than usual, 5:45 a.m. The city was just beginning to glow, sunlight catching the edges of skyscrapers, but my chest already hummed with tension. Today was the day of the press conference. The day I would speak publicly, about my uncle, about the scheme, about how my own family had turned my name into their tool. Tessa had drilled it into me. Look confident. Keep it brief. Don't let emotion drown you, but speak from the heart. I buttoned a crisp white shirt, tied my hair into a bun, and caught my reflection in the mirror. "You've already been through hell," I whispered. "Now just keep walking." The conference room wasn't grand, just a modest space in a downtown legal center. A podium, a few microphones, journalists hunched over recorders, the faint buzz of cameras warming up. Tessa stood at my side, calm as always, while two DOJ agents lingered near the walls. I waited for the signal. The assistant federal prosecutor spoke first. He summarized the investigation, the use of fronts, the laundering of funds, and the cooperation of a key witness who had made the case possible. That witness was me. When he said my name, my stomach tightened. I stepped up to the microphone, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. "My name is Maya Quinn," I began. "I'm 29 years old. And today, I'm not here as a lawyer or a finance professional, but as someone who was pulled into a criminal scheme without my knowledge or consent. And as someone who has chosen not to stay silent anymore." I paused. The room went still. In 2015, while I was still a student, I signed documents I didn't understand. Those papers were later used to create offshore companies and process transactions I knew nothing about. At the center of all this is my uncle, Victor Quinn, a partner at a law firm, who used my name, my signature, and my trust under the guise of family loyalty. I swallowed hard and continued. When I found out, I didn't want to believe it. But the evidence left no doubt. Now, I'm cooperating with the investigation, not to save myself, but to make sure no one else is used this way again. I let my eyes travel across the room. If anyone out there has experienced something similar, know this: you're not alone. Silence is what they depend on. And together, we can break it. When I stepped back from the podium, I was trembling. Tessa squeezed my hand. "Perfect," she whispered. "No theatrics. No weakness. Exactly right." The journalists swarmed immediately, shouting questions. The DOJ limited them to 3. I answered simply, without breaking down. When it was over, security led me out through a side exit. The air outside was hot, thick, heavy, and I felt hollow, as if someone had carved the inside out of me and left only resolve behind. Back home, a message from my mother waited on my phone. "Maya. I can't listen to this. These are our people. This is your father's family, Victor. You're putting everything out there for the world to see. I don't know if I can forgive you. Just one message. Nothing else." I read it over and over until the words blurred. For the first time in months, I wanted to vanish, switch off the phone, disappear from the grid, stop existing in headlines. But by morning, I was everywhere. Lawyer's daughter exposes family empire, the truth that shattered a dynasty. Maya Quinn, victim or new symbol of justice? Reporters wanted comments. Former colleagues said nothing. My job was gone, that much was obvious. Some friends stopped replying altogether. And yet, there it was, a message from Dana. "I watched you." And I cried. Thank you. We're not alone anymore. Then another from Jason. After your speech, I decided to file an official complaint. You gave us a spine. I'm with you. It wasn't redemption. But it mattered. That evening I met Jonah at a small bar in Brooklyn. The place was dim, with an old jazz record spinning softly. I thought it would feel easier after this, I said. Like telling the truth would somehow make it lighter. He shook his head. The truth doesn't take away pain. It just takes away the lies. My mom doesn't understand. She's not ready yet, he said gently. But she will be. You've already done more than most people ever do. For the first time in a long time, I let myself breathe. A few quiet days followed. Silence from Victor. Silence from home. Only the DOJ kept moving, until one morning, they called to say he had been officially charged, and the entire firm was now under federal investigation. Tessa told me the next step would be a court hearing. Maybe even a face-to-face with him. And for once, the idea didn't terrify me. I was ready. By 7 that morning, July 12th, I was already up, sitting at my kitchen table in New York, sipping coffee from my favorite mug while flipping through legal documents. It was the day of the first hearing, the one where I would officially testify as a key witness in the DOJ's case against my uncle. The city outside was still half asleep, the streets soft with early light, but my body buzzed like I'd already had too much caffeine. Part of me wanted to run, wash my hair again, pace, do something, but Tessa's voice echoed in my head. Be ready. Don't waste your energy before the fight. By the time I reached the federal courthouse in Manhattan, Tessa was already waiting near the steps, calm, focused, unreadable. Let's do this right, she said, checking her watch. I nodded, and together we walked into that cold maze of marble hallways and echoing floors. The courtroom looked like something out of an old film, dark wood, heavy furniture, air that hummed with quiet authority. Here, it wasn't about cameras or image anymore. It was about voices, and truth. I passed through security, handed over my ID, and took the briefcase Tessa gave me. Inside were printouts of metadata, audio transcripts, and handwriting comparisons, the backbone of everything we'd built. When I sat down, I saw Dana, Jason, and Anna, the others who'd come forward. Our eyes met, and not a single one of us spoke. We didn't have to. Words would have broken the fragile calm holding us together. We weren't afraid anymore. Just resolute. At 9 o'clock sharp, the judge entered, a woman in a soft pink jacket with a measured, unreadable face. On one side of the room sat the DOJ team. On the other, Victor's lawyers. The press waited behind the glass partition, pens poised, ready to dissect lives. The court will now open the case of the United States versus Quinn, the judge said. Preliminary questions and witness status have been reviewed. Ms. Quinn, are you ready to testify? I am, I answered, steady but quiet. The judge nodded. The court acknowledges the inclusion of new digital evidence, Google account metadata, video files recovered from the defendant's possession, and the verified audio recording. I shot Tessa a quick look. She didn't speak, but the faintest spark in her eyes said it all, it's working. The testimonies began. The first was Agent Jonah Pierce, head of digital intelligence. Did you verify the login records for Ms. Quinn's Google account? Yes, Jonah replied clearly. 3 logins on the date Lexford Holdings was registered, all traced to the AL Legal Office network. Were the documents in question downloaded from a company device? Yes, a MacBook connected to that same network. And the audio evidence, is it authentic? Yes. It was located on a flash drive submitted by Ms. Quinn. The next witnesses, Dana, Jason, and Anna, each told their truth. I was told to sign papers and say I knew what I was signing. I got a bonus afterward, I didn't ask questions. I was scared. Their words were simple. No theatrics. No dramatics. Just the raw pieces that built the case brick by brick. Then it was my turn. My hands were cold, my mouth dry, but my mind, clear. Ms. Quinn, the prosecutor began, did you personally sign the documents for Lexford Holdings? Yes, I said. But I didn't understand what I was signing. Did your uncle assist in certifying those documents? Yes. Did anyone ever explain that they were part of an offshore structure? No. When did you realize what had been done? Only recently. So you believe you were used? Absolutely. The room went still. For a moment, it felt like all sound had been drained away, no murmurs, no movement, just the heavy silence of something breaking. 2 hours later, the judge concluded the session. The documents were officially accepted. The case was formally handed to the DOJ, with the next hearing set for August. When we stepped out of the courthouse, the noise of the city hit us, sirens, traffic, voices, all too loud after so much stillness. I clutched the folder of evidence and looked at Dana. She gave a small nod. We both knew what it meant. We'd cracked the foundation of something powerful. Maybe not destroyed it yet, but enough to make it tremble. That night, the news spread fast. Federal investigation into AL. Legal group, family empire collapses. Forged signatures, offshore accounts, once prominent firm under fire. Victor was barred from practicing law. His partner suspended. And just like that, the empire began to crumble. Friends stopped calling. Former colleagues pretended not to know me. But for once, I didn't care. I had become one of those people who fight not because they want to, but because they have to. Because sometimes, survival means telling the truth out loud. 3 days later, I went to see my mother. Tessa came with me. My mother looked smaller somehow, tired, but calmer. I saw your testimony, she said softly. It was powerful. I didn't know what to say at first. Mom. I never expected you to understand. I just needed you to know why. She reached out and pulled me into her arms. I cried, and for the first time, she cried too. That night, back in my apartment, I sat on the balcony and looked out over Manhattan, the skyline glowing like fire on the horizon. I thought about everything we'd torn down, and everything still left to rebuild. We were breaking the system, one truth at a time. And I knew, deep down, the hardest part wasn't behind me. It was still coming. But so was real freedom. The morning after the hearing, I got a call from my old office. There was no preamble, no warning, just the polite tone of finality. Due to the current circumstances within your family, and the allegations involved, management has decided your position has become too controversial, the HR specialist said, her voice crisp, rehearsed. It's nothing personal. It's simply about our clients. I swallowed hard. So, I no longer have access to my corporate account? That's correct. You have 1 week to close out your files and vacate your office. Understood, I said quietly. When I hung up, the tears came fast. Not because I was blindsided, I'd seen it coming, but because the title I'd worked years for, young professional, had just been replaced with a new one, liability. I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was a risk. The next few days, I camped out in a small cafe on the corner near my apartment. I'd get there early, order tea, open my laptop, and just sit, surrounded by strangers whose lives kept moving. Former colleagues passed by sometimes, pretending not to see me. A few friends sent half-hearted messages, promising to grab lunch soon, but none of them followed through. Explaining yourself gets exhausting when no one really wants to hear. Each morning I'd open my laptop, stare at the job listings, and close it again. It wasn't fear of rejection, it was the emptiness that comes after everything you've built suddenly dissolves. I kept wondering, what now? Then one afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Anna, one of the former employees who'd testified. Maya, I read that article about how Victor brought new clients to the firm. I should have said something sooner. If you want, I can help with your new initiative. Her message was simple. But it hit deep. Someone still believed in me. Maybe that was the spark I'd been waiting for. That night, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. At the top, I typed, Law for Families Integrity Initiative. It was just a draft, but I already knew what it would be. A project to help victims of schemes like mine, offering free legal aid and education. I wrote a few paragraphs. My hands trembled, but my heart was steady. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faint pull of purpose again. Later that evening, my mother stopped by. She looked softer somehow, her grief no longer sharp but tired. I want to be there for you, she said quietly. I won't stay silent anymore. I took her hand. Then we'll start together. It felt small, fragile even, but it was a beginning. A week later, through Anna, I met a young woman whose name had been used in a similar financial fraud. She didn't want her identity revealed. When she told me her story, I saw the same mixture of fear and numbness I once carried, but also a flicker of hope behind it. I offered to help her pro bono. Soon, my nights were filled with drafts of legal appeals, letters to advocacy groups, and proposals for new regulations. I went from living in silence to working with intent, reaching out to people, building bridges, doing the kind of work that actually mattered. I'd lost nearly everything that once defined me, but now I finally understood why. This burden wasn't punishment, it was direction. That night, I sat on my balcony and watched the lights of Manhattan flicker on one by one. My heart felt strangely calm. There was pain, yes, loss, exhaustion, change, but under it all, something new had begun to grow. I wasn't chasing symbolic success anymore. This rebuilding, this helping, was my real work. On September 1st, I officially registered my nonprofit. Family Integrity Legal Aid. Nothing fancy, just a website, a home-based email, and a simple logo of two intertwined lines shaped like surnames, meant to symbolize truth and justice. There wasn't much money behind it, only determination and one clear goal. To help people who'd been trapped in financial or legal schemes tied to their own families. Our first step was a free webinar. I sat in front of the camera in a borrowed conference room with my mom on one side and Anna on the other. The topic, how not to become a tool in someone else's scheme. I talked openly about my experience, about the red flags people often miss. Family help that comes with hidden paperwork. Requests for personal data. Contracts nobody fully explains. 70 people showed up online that night. 70. And when the questions started coming in, anxious, hopeful, real, I saw something in their faces. A spark. The kind that says, I don't have to stay quiet anymore. Word spread faster than I expected. Within weeks, I'd brought on a few volunteers, former lawyers, a retired accountant, a digital security consultant. A local charity even agreed to cover the rent for a tiny office in Brooklyn. What started as an idea was suddenly turning into something tangible. Anna became my co-coordinator. Dana handled PR, crafting messages that sounded both strong and compassionate. Jason took charge of our tech, keeping our files encrypted and systems safe. In the evenings, I worked on content, sample appeal letters, checklists, and educational materials for families. Despite everything I'd lost, my job, my reputation, my old life, I could feel this was the real beginning. Not long after, another hearing took place. And that's when the first pieces of Victor's statement hit the news. Yes, I organized the procedural structure through Lexford in 2015. Yes, I showed Maya the forms and asked her to sign them. And yes, I knew she didn't fully understand what she was signing. But I thought I was protecting her. It wasn't a full confession, more of a crack in his armor. But for the first time, his words sounded almost human. Maybe even a hint of remorse. The DOJ added his admission to the official evidence, and the media ran with it. Victor Quinn gradually acknowledges guilt, the headlines read. When I saw it that morning, my heart twisted in two directions at once, pain on one side, relief on the other. Part of me was finally breaking free. Part of me still mourned what had been lost. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase the damage. But it clears the fog. And once you've seen clearly, you can't go back to blindness. He paused, just long enough for the silence to feel deliberate. I understand now that my actions hurt people I love. I broke their trust, and I broke the law. For that, I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Not for the years of silence, the manipulation, the legal chaos he'd left in his wake. But hearing those words, I'm sorry, after so long, was still something. A fracture in the wall that had stood between us since that spring in 2015. The judge listened without expression. Then she adjusted her glasses and spoke. Mr. Quinn, your conduct represents a profound breach of both professional ethics and personal integrity. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Restitution will be determined pending further review. The gavel struck once. And just like that, it was over. Victor didn't look back as marshals escorted him away. The door closed behind him with a muted click, the kind that echoes long after you leave the room. For a long moment, none of us moved. The reporters were silent, pens motionless. The air in the courtroom felt heavier somehow, as if it knew what had just ended. Tessa touched my arm gently. "It's done," she whispered. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a quiet clearing, the moment after a storm when the air is still thick, but you can finally breathe again. Outside the courthouse, the cold wind cut through my coat. Cameras flashed, voices called my name, but I barely heard them. I just stood there, watching the sunlight bounce off the courthouse windows, the same windows that had reflected my fear months ago, and now reflected something else entirely. Peace. Dana hugged me first. Then Jason. Then Anna, who whispered, "You did it." I shook my head. We did. That night, back in my apartment, I lit a candle on the windowsill and opened my journal, the same one I'd carried since the beginning. On the first page, I had once written, "Who am I?" A forged name? A signature? A mistake? Now I added a new line beneath it. I am not what was done to me. I am what I choose to build next. The city glowed outside, millions of lights, each one a story, a fight, a beginning. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt ready to live mine. The day after we planted the tree, I went to the office early. The morning light streamed through the blinds, soft and gold, settling across the stacks of folders and handwritten notes that had shaped the past 3 years of my life. On the wall hung the framed logo, 2 intertwined lines, still imperfect, still strong. Underneath, the new nameplate. Maya Reed, founder. For a long moment I just stood there, listening to the hum of the city outside, the faint rhythm of traffic, the muffled voices of people starting their day. It felt like the world had finally caught its breath, and so had I. I sat down at my desk, opened my journal again, and turned to the final page. The one that had waited blank through everything. I wrote. I used to think the truth would destroy me. But it only stripped away what wasn't real. The pen hovered for a second before I added the last line. Freedom isn't clean. It's built from every broken thing you choose to keep living through. I closed the notebook. Outside, the wind stirred the new leaves on the tree, not strong yet, but steady. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was standing in someone else's story. I was standing in my own. With the name Reed, I feel weightless. I've started drafting my book, preparing new lectures, and developing training programs. Some people ask, what's in a name? For me, the answer is simple: survival, truth, and the freedom to define my own legacy. I've even decided to rename my memoir, The Legacy I Chose. Because that's exactly what this is, not what I inherited, but what I built. Next week, I'll stand at a podium at Harvard Law School for my first lecture under my new name. The topic: ethical responsibility, family betrayal, and digital security. I've already practiced my opening line. My name is Maya Reed, and I lived through a family crisis that gave birth to my new mission. It still makes my voice shake, not from fear, but from pride. I haven't erased the name Quinn from my story. I just refuse to be its symbol anymore. I've become what I always should have been, a person who chooses truth, not the shadow of it. January 10th. Morning sunlight spills across the kitchen table of my new apartment in Brooklyn. I sit there with my laptop, a mug of coffee, and a quiet that once felt impossible. There's no rush, no anxiety, no courtroom waiting. Just peace. Yesterday, I came back from Harvard. I remember walking down the hallway, hearing the shuffle of papers, the laughter of students, and realizing, this was my new reality. No nameplates or family emblems. Just me. Today's schedule is full but light: a morning meeting with Anna and Dana, a briefing with our volunteers, then an interview for Ethics in Law magazine. Everything is organized, planned, intentional. For once, my life doesn't feel like it's happening to me, I'm steering it. Our latest project launches this week, a mini-grant program for lawyers defending clients exploited by their own families. We already have our first few applications. Then my phone rings, it's Mom. I'll be home tonight, she says. Let's have dinner before New Year's Eve. I'll be waiting, I tell her. But I've got another Harvard lecture in the morning. I know, she says, smiling in her voice. I'm proud of you. That warmth, that calm, it's new. It means we're healing. 20 minutes later, an email pings into my inbox. Maya, thank you. Your advice helped me file my claim. I finally feel heard. You've changed my life. I read it 3 times. The words land quietly but powerfully. This, not headlines or verdicts, is the real reward. After lunch, I meet the team at the office. We laugh over coffee. Anna's brought cookies, Dana shows me the new site design, and Jonah, ever the perfectionist, is still testing the security system from home. It feels light. Real. We're not symbols of a tragedy anymore, we're builders. That evening, Mom comes by. We cook together, roast chicken, salad, and a berry pie. She tells me how a neighbor recently asked about me and smiled when she said, "Her name's Reed now." Isn't that lovely? I reach across the table and squeeze her hand. We've come full circle, not by forgetting, but by growing. Later that night, I go into my room and look at my reflection again. The woman staring back has a calm gaze and tired, steady eyes. That's me, scars and all, but without shadows. This isn't a post about a court case, or a press conference, or a verdict. It's just a story about ordinary peace, the kind you earn after fighting for your name, your truth, and your future. I smile. At the beginning of this journey, there was a box of documents, a flash drive, and a girl who didn't understand how deep betrayal could go. Now, there's just a woman, standing in her own light, carrying only what she chose to keep. I turn off the lamp. Outside, Brooklyn hums softly through the night. This isn't the end. It's the beginning.